You have to approve the recording. All right, to get a little pop-up to approve that. All right, Kareem, so glad to have you here. Been working with you for a while. You just introduce yourself. Just walk us through your company name, the size, the market you're in, the city and town, and how big the company is.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. And it has been, and I don't use words lightly, it has been a genuine pleasure seeing a company like Rentscale at the caliber that you guys operate, partnering with us in our growth. So our
Thank you.
company is Real Property Management Experts. We're based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We currently manage around 330 properties.
Excellent. Thank you for that very much. We've loved working with you as well. It has been a lot of fun. Sometimes people underestimate how fun collaborations can be, but every time I hear updates from you guys, and I got to interview Christian for a different article, and he was so much fun, and he had nothing but great things to say about you. So the admiration is definitely mutual. So 350 doors, is that what I heard you say?
So we're about 330, 340. We're bringing some on that close to 340, let's say.
Okay. Got it. So between 300 and 350. And how long have you guys been in business?
We just had our 3-year anniversary.
Okay. Great. So 3 years. And what has that growth trajectory look like for you? Where do you think you ended year one and year two at?
Yeah, great question. Year one, we started, as I said, kind of just our anniversary was 2 weeks ago, I think. So we started in February of 2021 with 0 doors, and we closed 2021, I believe, with around 80 doors.
Great.
Then through 2022, I think we closed, and I can look this up. I should probably pull it up, but I think we closed 2022 with around 160, 140, 160 doors.
Okay.
And then we closed last year at about 280.
Great. And if you want to revise those numbers when you actually look at it, feel free to email me, but I'm just using broad strokes here. But
Yeah,
that tells the story. I don't, if it's 80 versus 90, it's not going to change the story, right?
right.
So 80 to 160, so you doubled. And then you almost doubled again to today, but it took you a little bit longer than a year. And that's fast growth. And that's an amazing story. I think a lot of property managers that reach out to us, I mean, they call us and they're like, hey, I'm 3, 4 years into this thing and I'm just at 80 doors or 120 doors. And so I think, I wanna project a little bit here. I think that you started the business after having a lot of experience, and that's something that helped you start the company fast because that's really important. There's nothing, more kind of demoralizing than having a vision, starting the company, and then not having any clients for the first 2 years. And I'm sure you want more. I'm sure you're very ambitious, but I've seen you really do that. So take us before that. Kind of what was your career like, and what was your background like before you started the company in 2021?
Yeah, sure. No, and obviously we all pull on our experiences, not just our theoretical or educational or strategic experience, but our actual taking ideas and making them real. So my background is I'm an engineer, which are not typically associated with as creative thinking, but very structured. But I think I have a little bit of both. I'm an electrical engineer, my undergrad, bachelor's degree, and then I have a master's degree with a focus on biomedical. I went into the engineering field, what's called automation engineering. If you've been to factories, robotics, machine vision, some of the things we talk about today, we were doing in the late 90s. And then 3 years later, I began to become very intrigued by not just the robots and the machines, but the layer above them, the software that orchestrated things, that told them what to do and when to do it and verified what they did. So that took me naturally into the world of software, and specifically a software called manufacturing execution systems,
Mhm.
which I ended up spending the next 16, 17 years in. I was in two startups, and the last one, we grew from 11 million in annual revenue to over 50 million. And we were private equity backed. During that time, I had the opportunity to kind of develop my career from a engineer to a engineering team leader to a project manager over software development projects
Mhm.
to product management and strategy, and then marketing looping in, because marketing needs to tell the story for the product that you're envisioning. We can't tell a story that's not connected to the product fundamentally. And then I got R&D rolled in because of my technical background to make sure that we execute the product to the product management plans and tell the story through marketing, right? So you can see I had a pretty holistic view, and I actually did a stint for 3 years in sales. And as an engineer, sales is not necessarily my cup of tea, but I realized this. Here's what I realized. If I believe in my product and I know it, and I know who it serves and the problems I solve, I don't have to sell. I just tell my story and it sells every day. So I had the opportunity to actually build an entire industry segment called medical devices, again, with my background. And just to, not to boast, but just to tell you the power of these principles.
Yeah.
We became the number one MES software on earth for medical devices. We still are, since we sold the company. So if you have a drug-eluting stent that goes into your heart, if you have a Zoll medical defib, if you've seen those in public places, or cardiac sciences, well, those are manufactured with our software per
Wow.
FDA compliance. And so, so that after we sold our last company, private equity, back to Siemens, the big German conglomerate, I essentially pseudo-retired. And my wife laughs because she's like, "You can't sit still. What are you talking about, retiring?" So what happened was, that was back in 2017. And then I took a period of time where I had people reaching out to me to take on positions, executive positions in startups, and I didn't want to do that. But I said, you know what? I'll advise you. I'll invest and I'll advise, but I don't want an operating role. And so I did that for several years, and I still have 3 or 4 companies that I've invested and advised. But then COVID came, and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Elias and Dolly, who live in Lebanon, my wife is Lebanese, I'm originally Egyptian, and they came. In fact, he arrived on the last plane before COVID.
Hmm.
Lockdowns happened March, whatever it was, 15, 16, 17, that
I
Friday. We all remember.
remember those days. It was a surreal
Yeah,
time.
that's right. And he came on, I believe, the last flight out of Paris that evening. And he's a physical therapist, and she assisted him. And we're sitting here. They're locked into they lived with us for 3 months, and they're like, "Karim, I don't think we're going back. The country is a disaster. Lebanon had that big explosion, economic crisis, political crisis, not just COVID." And they're like, "Okay, so what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, you couldn't be stuck in a better country on the planet, the most entrepreneur friendly nation on the planet. So the sky's the limit." And I believe that. And what I didn't tell you is, during those years in the software industry, I helped several people launch other businesses, local retail, commercial businesses on the side, because God had blessed us with excess cash flow. Anyway, so I looked at the market, and I had invested in a bunch of real estate. I had built a portfolio myself. And I said, you know what? I love that. I love real estate in the US. I think the market's going to continue to do well. And guess what? Not just owning real estate has benefits, but managing real estate, the service side of this, is also very powerful and puts you in a strategic position to understand what's happening in the market, have access to unique inventory that nobody else has, and have metrics that people don't have. You're much more smart as an overall real estate investor by owning property management. Anyway, we pray. We're followers of Christ, so we pray, we consider everything thoughtfully. We analyze the market, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. And they agreed, and we said, let's go. We spent 4 months really thinking, planning, strategizing, and we launched in February of 2021.
Amazing. Fantastic story. So I got a ton of follow-up questions on that, although you told that very succinctly. And I love that because I'm immediately like transporting myself back into, being literally in this office right here, thinking through what was going to happen to the world like in March of 2020 and April, and it's like we showed up every day, and it's like and I think we're closer in age, where, I'd been through the dot-com bust, and I had been through, 9/11, and then I'd been through 2008, and so I was like, hey, like, tons of great companies were built during those times. And that was really the message I took out as a total sidebar. And I love that you thought, hey, this is not the end of the world. This is just an opening, just a crack in the door that I can put my foot in and we can do something. So, my question, simple question, I want to ask you a few more. Do you mind me asking about how old you were when you started the company? You said semi-retired, but you're not the age where I would think you would retired. So you must have retired a young man.
I was born in 73, so I was 44, your age when I did
Yeah.
retire. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, exactly. You had many years left in you of professional career. So that's right. So you had about 20 to 25 years of a solid career, software,
Yes.
electrical engineering, other things. I love you and I bonded a little bit before the call. I think it's really important to point out, for the writers listening to this, that you had the fortune of doing a little bit of all the roles, right? Like you weren't just in a dark room in a basement working on engineering and logic. You also got to talk to customers. You got to do R&D. Like it seemed like you had like a 360-degree of business before you started the company. Is that a fair assessment?
No, it's spot on, Jeremy. And in fact, the CEO, who's a very dear friend of mine, who we both still advise startups,
Yeah.
he said to me, "Karim, the only thing you haven't done in the company is accounting." Which, by the way, when I was engaged to my wife, I encouraged her to get an accounting degree, and our dating, because culturally we're very protective of that, was composed of studying accounting. So I actually am very fluid with accounting, but that was not what I did professionally. That was the only. But yes, it was a 360 view. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm kind of picking up. I think the subtext here I'm seeing, because I feel like I can relate to that, is that when you have context for all of the facets and the skills of business, it is a little bit of an unfair advantage to start a new business, right? Because you already know what it is. So really, the day you started your property management company, the uphill climb was just learning property management, right? Because you kind of already you were stacking on top of the business context you already had. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, you have the principles. Now you're taking them and applying them to a new context. Yes.
Yes. Amazing. Okay, great. And so, what was the relationship look like? So you mentioned family staying with you. How did you structure it? Are you the only owner, or is it a partnership? What actually came about from that conversation?
I believe the best things, the best companies are where it's a win-win-win. Okay. The owners win, the employees win, the people we serve win.
Great.
And that plays into structure. I know people, unfortunately, who will use leverage to get the upper hand. I don't do that. So
Mhm.
it's down the middle split between me and my sister-in-law and her husband in
Okay.
terms of ownership, even though our roles are distinct, and everybody gets compensated for their role, and then of course has the equal ownership. We do have minority positions, 5% positions, from two strategic advisors I wanted to bring on board early on because of that context of property management.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for being so transparent about that. And the fact that you were thinking that through from an advisement standpoint that early shows kind of, I think, the business maturity you had when you kicked that off. So you decided to invest in a franchise. So you're a part of RPM, which we love, and we've seen what they do. Obviously, by far and away, the largest franchise of property management. What led you to that decision? What made you decide, hey, I want to go do this instead of completely calling it Korean Property Management Inc. and starting from scratch?
Yeah, this is a question of strategy, right? And in strategy, which I have a lot of background in, you understand your market, you understand your differentiation in that market, what makes me stand out. And then you ask the question we used to call in the software industry build, partner, buy, right? Am I building from scratch? We did this with our product strategy. Am I partnering for a solution so that I can accelerate the value proposition and get leverage and time to market? Or or am I going to buy an existing organization? And as I looked at the trade-offs, I felt that we as a team, we could build a team that is strategic, that is smart, that can bring in technology and advantages that don't exist as much in the market today and excel. But I wanted the umbrella of someone who's been there and done that, and a community of people, very valuable, who
Mm-hmm.
are entrepreneurs, who have themselves, because it's not just the franchisor, right, who has all the answers. They've built something that is distinguished, and you get leverage and national presence and best practices and systems and cost leverage. But that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is if you're in a community of entrepreneurs all innovating in the same context, that's very powerful. And so for that reason, I weighed the pros and the cons, the cost of that and the limitations of a franchise
Mm-hmm.
versus the advantage in time to market, in terms of differentiation, in terms of value created through the community and the franchisor, and decided it was worth it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I cannot agree with that more. I think you and I both have enough years of under our belt to realize the lone cowboy only goes so far, And so I'm a big member of Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. If you don't know, you should check it out. Love it. And I spent a lot of time and money, just being around other entrepreneurs that are just thinking differently. And obviously, I think you probably won't be shocked that Rentscale was born out of that spirit. And I know Christian is in a community. He's a great leader in that. And yeah, it's just seems like a really soft skill that too many entrepreneurs undervalue. Would you agree? Just being surrounded by other
So
people.
without a doubt, without a doubt, if you've been in it, you understand its value.
Yes, 100%. Well, thank you for those shares. You got a fast start. I spend my time speaking to property managers all day, every day. And people call in and they say, "Hey, we're curious about rent scale." And not everybody. I mean, there's just amazing stories like yours, but overwhelmingly, I talk to a lot of people that say, "Hey, I've been doing this a handful of years, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years." And I'm just struggling to get to the break-even point. I'm struggling to get past something. And as you laid out, you told us that story 80, then 163. I think a lot of people that call me would trade places with you. You've grown very fast. And I know you have a very quality portfolio because that's something everybody will always talk about is like, oh, I'm focused on quality. I know enough about your business. No, you have a very quality portfolio. So what's your advice? What are your thoughts? Like how did you get such a great start out of the gate? Was it luck? Did you do a couple things? Like what took you there?
Yeah, sometimes in retrospect we embellish our stories. I try not to do that because I think it's not valuable to others,
We are all
and
guilty of
it's set.
that.
Yeah, and but for it to be valuable to anybody listening to this or reading the article, I want to put some real meat behind the bones. There are some very tangible things that I believe produce the outcome. And I tell you, we tried to project realistic numbers for the first 12 months and we exceeded them. And here's what I think. Number one, you have to ask the most fundamental question of strategy. Is my market served well or not? How is it being served? Are the needs and the problems sufficiently being addressed or not?
Mhm.
And how can I serve that need better in a more compelling way? I don't like playing the commodity game. I've never played it in my career.
Mhm.
So if you will, I don't want to be, another car in the lot. I want to be a Tesla. Okay. I want to be unique. Well, pick your brand, doesn't matter. Mercedes, Tesla, whatever. And so the first question we had to ask ourselves at gut, are we just another, you know, company with a Google business site and a website doing the same thing that everybody else does? Or how are we going to be distinguished? Because if we can't be distinguished, let's find a market where we can be. We don't have to do property management. We can do anything in this country. And so
Yeah,
I believe
wait,
the
I was
key
just saying
is,
real
as you
fast. You
said,
didn't have to be in Charlotte. You could have been anywhere else, right? So It's the product and it's the actual geographic location that I just want to bring that up. Like that's a really important thing. You clearly looked at both. You looked at the product and you looked at the geography.
Yes, we did. Obviously, I'm located in South Charlotte. There would be we could go to certain adjacent markets, but fortunately, we were in a market that Zillow rated for 2024, I believe, the number one real estate market in the U.S. It wasn't the case in 2022, but it was a top 10 market, along with places like Tampa and Austin at the time.
Did that
Um,
play the factor? Did that when you did some research, you're like, hey, we're just in the right spot. Let's do this.
yeah, so it did compel the whole value proposition, which is the market big enough? Is
Yep.
it being underserved or served sufficiently? What would make me any better than anybody else? Am I
Yes.
just dreaming? Why? So we concluded the following, and this was our strategic position upon which we build our technology, our culture, our pricing model, our marketing and qualification criteria for who we will work with and who we will not work
Oh,
with. Okay,
yes.
that's important, as you know full well.
Yeah.
So we decided that we're going to be and this is who we are in full transparency. We are a Christian-minded organization, meaning we derive our values about how we treat others, how we back what we say. People have other words for those things, integrity, but for me, it's derived from scripture, from the Bible. So
Yeah.
a Christian-minded organization that is number two, high touch service. So there's a problem in the property management where you get all this great service on the front end and then it falls off on the back end. We want to be a high touch service company. We want the experience to match the claims. I'm big on that all my career. Otherwise, I'm just making false claims, promises in the door. I don't want to do that. Third, we're going to be investor minded. A lot of the people in this business do not understand the basics of asset acquisition, of return on investment, of the four quadrants of value created in an investment property: cash flow, tax benefit, appreciation, and debt paydown. They don't even understand that. But we want to understand and we want to appeal to that investor minded person, or create investors, which I'll tell you about. Create our own investor community, our own little pond that we fish in where no one competes with us, right?
By the way, it did
And
take
then
me
finally,
2 years being in the business before I understood the multidimensional things that you just said about it's not just cash flow. It's not just am I getting 50 or $100 per property per month. It's also all those other things. So I just wanted to pause on that because that is we call it multidimensional aspect of investing in real estate. So I love that you got that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's just such an important
no, no,
thing.
no, at
So
all.
many
Not at
people.
all.
Yeah. So all right,
Great.
go ahead.
Four
So
dimensions.
keep going on the value.
So a Christian-minded organization in our culture. Two, high-touch service. Okay. Three, investor-minded.
Mhm.
Four, tech-savvy. And
Mm.
with my background, of course, that's a play. Let me give you an example so it's not theoretical.
Yeah.
We are a keyless operation. Okay. Keyless, meaning we don't issue keys, we don't copy keys, we don't lose keys, we don't change locks. We have gone to a Bluetooth Wi-Fi enabled solution
Yep.
where from the time we put in the lock, we use that for showings. And there's a company that does this really well, Showmoji, we've partnered with. In fact, they adapted some of their pricing model to some recommendations we made to them to make it work.
Fascinating.
And so from that first lock-in to the end of life of that property, showings and everything's all automated. Anyway, just an example. So those are the four: Christian-minded, high-touch service, investor-minded, and tech-savvy.
And it's worth pausing on this because I think I've had this conversation with people. You're clearly showing up with a vision, and you didn't feel like adopting a franchise hindered any of that, right? Because I think that's one of the biggest pushbacks people might tell me. By no means selling everybody needs to work with a franchise, but one of the biggest things I think of is like, hey, I don't need a franchise because I have a big vision for my company. But what I'm hearing from you is you had a very articulate vision, but it doesn't sound like the franchise really held that back for you.
Not at all. The franchise is adopting some of our ideas.
Mm, amazing. So just like
In fact, yeah, they invited me to the Franchise Advisory Council. Okay. I'm one of the members, and I have good conversations with the president. And we're releasing some new things coming out
yeah,
that are very attached to that tech savvy and investor mindedness. If you've heard of Wealth Optimizer, right? And the
right.
next generation coming out, if I showed you the tools I built 3 years ago in spreadsheets for that investor minded analysis and projection. So we're treating it like, like you talk to your 401k advisor. What's your plan? When do you want to retire? Right? Okay. Let me tell you how we do that in real estate. Only it's not just sitting on a 401k locked up till you're 65. I'm going to drive cash flow on your net worth more dramatically and benefit you in taxes. And here's our 10-year plan, and here's the acquisition goal. Right? Who's doing that in property management?
Not enough people, that's for sure. I love that. So that's great, Karim. So people are going to be reading this, and I just want to say this. Look, have you ever started your company? You've probably made that decision if I'm going to be in a franchise or not. But I really want to stress, I think for our readers, if you are in a franchise, that you are not in a box. You still get to innovate. And as you said, I know, we work with multiple franchises, and I think all of the corporate, brass that we work with say we get our best ideas from our franchisees. And so I just want to make that point. I don't think enough people think about that. They think, woe is me, I'm in a franchise, I can't innovate, I can't push the boundary. And you're a great example of like, no, I am. I'm just building on the shoulders of previous giants and I'm taking it to the next level. I'm being an entrepreneur. And by the way, I'm going to give those ideas back to my network and they're going to riff on it and I'm going to learn something from them. So it really is full circle from the network effect that we talked about, right? So I really wanted to say that because you're a
No,
great
that's spot
example
on.
of that.
Yeah, just to put a point on what you said, and
Yeah.
just it's heard that I'm not just agreeing with you. This is my first franchise, okay? And did I have some of those questions? Yes, I did. But what I have found, it has not hindered me in the least.
Mm,
It's provided a banner over my door. It's provided an infrastructure, but within that infrastructure and banner and community, I have pretty much free reign within that context to do what I want, and I have not been hindered in any way.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That was great transparency. I really wanted to like harp on that, even though it's kind of outside the context of the article, because I just think enough other people need to hear that. I mean, you add up all the franchises together, we're talking about thousands of companies, and I want them to, lean into that entrepreneurial muscle the way you have, because that's amazing. And that's what we do as entrepreneurs, as business owners. We decide who do you want to serve, how we best serve them. You innovate. I love the technology stuff. I had no idea that so much of the wealth optimizer was kind of coming from your ideas, which is amazing. And by the way, just
I threw my ideas into the bucket. That was already happening because of we have some brilliant entrepreneurs that are out in the West Coast and others. They
yeah.
already had that in. I created a variation in terms of investor management, which was my own idea, and I shared that. And I think there's been some influence there.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the clarification. I mean, I just think overall, if somebody said, hey, what's one trend everybody should be thinking about? It's this idea that the last 20 years of property management has been I'm a service provider. I think the next 20 years is I'm an advisor. I'm actually helping my people become better investors. I'm bringing them pocket deals. You said it from the beginning. One of the reasons you started this company was I get access to unique information and deals that nobody else has. So how have you used that? I'd really like to hear from you. I feel like we are total in a total kinship here about I run a property management not because I just want to run a property management company, but because it enables me to be a better investor, to learn more, to help my investors. Like I'm really getting that from you. So talk kind of through like the secret stuff that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah, so you kind of hit the central pivot correctly from I am managing a property for you, toilets and rent and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
To I am really a real estate wealth advisor and builder. Okay, that's the pivot that we want to go and where we've been going, and that's how we're trying to get the whole team to think. Now, what that means is a little more. Number one, it means that when you are advising, first of all, it means greater value for your property owners. Why? One, I can explain to you the full benefits of owning that asset. And in fact, I can't be a tax advisor, but I can give you principles. Okay. And that is a value add service. Okay. In addition, I can also help you acquire assets. Now, not just in the open market, I have a community of 340 properties. And at any one time, I've got people who want to get out or do an exchange. And I've got people who want to get in. Now I have a closed community that is not accessible to the marketplace with high performing rental assets.
Yes.
And we can connect interest with an existing performance and make those deals. So we get to be participating in that, and we get to create value for both the one who's getting out and the one who's getting in, as an example. Now, in addition to that, when you become the expert, and when the real estate agent community begins to realize these guys don't just collect rent and do maintenance, they really know the heartbeat of how to assess real estate that is going to produce wealth and create passive income. Mm-hmm. We need them to help us with investors. And guess what? When investors see that expertise, who do they gravitate to? The guy doing the transaction or the guy advising them on what to buy and when to buy it? 100%. So you get this great place of influence and this halo effect that not only am I helping you make good investment decisions, but I'm also, because there's two parts. You can make a great investment decision, but not execute on the asset correctly and not get the return on investment you expected. So we can help you analyze, we can help you get in, and we can help you perform. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we have this I have this diagram that shows this cycle of real estate wealth creation from analysis, strategy, acquisition, performance, modifying your portfolio just like you do. You rebalance your 401ks, right?
Yeah.
Based on your age and stage. Well, you want to rebalance your portfolio based on changes in the local market, and maybe you've built too much equity and you can spread it out with a little more debt. So it really is a life cycle, and that's where we're going.
I love that. I just think so many of my clients, and I totally get it because I'm a business owner, and sometimes you're strapped just keeping the cart attached to the horse. But so many of our clients don't want to reach out to the owners and have those conversations and say, are you thinking about selling? Thinking about buying? Have you thought about how much equity you have in the property? Did you know you could leverage that? I love it. It's so obvious to me, but it seems so rare in execution that people are actually having those calls. And, I used to run an advertising agency before this, which is the Juicy Results calendar invite that everybody chuckles about. And we used to always say, hey, the best way to lose a client is to have a competitor call them and then think, hey, I really haven't heard from my agency in a while. And so I used to train my account managers, like, even if you got nothing to talk about, make sure you've talked to them this month or every other month, right? Because it's a lonely place when somebody calls them and they're like, yeah, I'm spending X $1,000 a month on a retainer and I really haven't heard from my person. And I think the parallel to property management is so clear, right? So what are you doing to keep in touch with those 300 plus owners? Like how often do you talk to them? What are your thoughts? Obviously, I don't want you to divulge any competitive advantages, but I'd love to know what your philosophy is on how to stay in touch.
Yeah. So again, you know that my mode is transparency. This is an area that I give us a decent job, but not a great job yet. Okay. I think we have, because our entry point is so high quality, we stand out. The minute they talk to us, they just feel these guys are a class of their own. And there's an implied confidence that is immediately given to us. And through the journey, my intent is, by educating the team enough on these principles of real estate financial management, that the way they think about problems and the way they talk about them is improved. So rather than just talking about, you know what, we need to turn the property, it's $2,700 and we collected $1,200 as security deposit, what do you want to do? Say, do you understand the time value of money? We will actually make that up. We're giving up $650 every week we haven't leased. So there is the time value of money, and even though there's out-of-pocket cost, this is why you should do this now. So that becomes part of how they think and speak to our owners and add value. Now, is that sufficient to feel that we're touching them enough? I still think we have work to do. And I think we have to build in a bit of a rhythm in terms of, depending on the person and interactions, to understand which have been not interacted with as frequently versus just doing across the board, which is just, if you will, brute forcing it. I always like to work smart, not just hard.
Love it. I don't want to give away any competitive advantages, but I definitely have some clients who have a VA just with a job to talk to their owners and tenants every month or every other month. So just an idea. It seems like you're doing a great job, but I do have some clients that have bragged about the impact that's had on their business, saying, I just got a VA and all they do is call every tenant. They want to know what's happening. They call every owner and they want to know what they're doing. And at the worst case scenario, they get a voicemail and they at least know that you're reaching out, even if they don't talk to you. So hopefully that's
Love
helpful.
it.
But I've seen that a lot. That this seems to be a growing trend. For the exact reason I joked about at the agency. The fastest way to lose a client is to have somebody else call them and they're like, I haven't really heard from the person I'm paying very often. So that seems very in line with your values, which is great. So obviously I've got some inside info on what you've done. We did an interview with Christian. You have seemingly an amazing team all around from what my team has told me, but I have had firsthand insight with your business development manager. So I'd like to think through for the person reading this that's starting at day one, who was doing the sales in the beginning and how long did you take before you said, hey, I'm going to actually put somebody in this role?
Yeah, no, great, very relevant question. When you start, you want to be lean and mean, and you also want to, as an entrepreneur, understand every part of your business.
Mhm.
For that reason, I did the sales. I took every single call, and which was tough for me, having decided I'm done with operations, but I did it. And I did it from February of 2021 until around May of 2022, when we partnered with RentScale, with you guys, to ultimately find Christian. So, I did it for a year and 4 months or so.
Okay.
And leads come in, pick up the phone. We have our execution plan, right? Text goes out, communication, phone call immediately within a minute, and go through the whole process from there. So, yeah, I did that until Christian came on board.
Great. So about a year, about how many doors do you think that took you to, roughly?
That took me to probably around, I'm going to say, 110, maybe somewhere
Okay.
between 100 and 120.
So we'll call it, you got your first 100 doors on your own doing that.
Yeah.
And what were the lessons you learned doing that for that first 100 doors?
Um, so many. I would say number one.
This may be
Um,
the whole article right here, by the way.
so, number one, um, know your client, understand the types of clients, be able to triage what is this the kind of client I want. So, number one, know, sort of begin segmenting in your mind the kind of people you're going to interact with. Okay. Two, understand your target profile and what is a fit and what is not. And that's very hard when you're starting because you're hungry
Yeah.
and your temptation is to take whatever. But I think you have to have an owner profile and a property profile. For example, something where we've matured along the way is, I'm going to say it this way: is this a emotionally stable owner? Okay, that may seem like an odd question, but it really matters.
It does. We
Yeah,
talk all the
is
time,
he?
owner qualification and property qualification. The property can't have an
Yes,
attitude,
I
but the
know.
owner can.
So you guys, yeah, I love that. So this is your world. But anyway, things like that. Like, are they financially stable? Do they have trust issues? Or are they willing to trust an organization if they're competent? So segment, qualify, know your product, know your differentiation, and listen, 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 listen. Don't just, spray and pray. Okay. So that when you speak to the particular person, their needs, you've qualified them, you want to do business with them. And if not, you've gently told them we're not a fit. And if they are, you're listening to the source spots. What do they really need? What is going on? What are their experiences? And then you have full command of your product and service, and you can address those points targetedly. And keep learning. Every time you make a mistake, chalk up the mistakes and write down those mistakes. And if they're systemic issues, for example, we're communicating too frequently or we're sending this email and it's not getting the right response, fix those systemic issues as well. So keep iterating and learning along the way.
Thank you for sharing that. That was fantastic. I think a lot of people listening to this or reading this are going to say, how'd you get those 100 doors in the first year? Were you making the phone ring? Were you reaching out to people? Like, how did you come in contact with enough people to actually build that first 100 doors?
Yeah. So there's one thing that's relevant that I need to share with you. So out of those 100 or 110 doors, there was probably residual 48 that we actually acquired. Now, that also was a relationship and a connection and
Yes.
working a connection, right? So there's a sales cycle for that.
Uh-huh.
So there was, and we're all single family. So we hadn't done any multifamily at that point. It's all one door at a time, sometimes two doors at a time, mostly
Yep.
one. How did I get the first 50 to 60? And how did we get the leads? And then I'll talk about that one exception where we got a bulk deal. It was experimenting with lead sources. So we did the classic. You know, obviously, with a franchise, you get your website, you get your SEO optimization.
Yep.
You have, of course, sources for pay-per-lead. You
Mm-hmm.
have to examine those and the quality of those leads. There's pay-per-click. And then there's, you know, things like boots on the ground, right? You're networking with realtors. And then there was a magic thing that we did. I shouldn't say magic. It came out of need. You know, you said something, Jeremy. The Bible says that there's many examples of this, that out of the most difficult things in life, out of suffering, God brings out the greatest attributes: patience, perseverance, strength, courage. They don't come out of a easy, casual life. They come out of a stressful, suffering life. And you know this. When you go through this, it builds some of the deepest traits we have are built out of the most difficult times in our life. Similarly, COVID, dull in your lives, trapped with us 90 days in our house, led to this enterprise. Similarly, I'm going to give you another analogy about this. So we had the classic sources of leads, but when you have 3 Google reviews, okay, and yes, they're 5 stars, but you know, people are looking saying, is that their aunt and uncle and cousin, right? They don't
That's
know.
exactly what they think.
They're
Yeah.
following the rules. So you know, you're not getting much in terms of organic. So you're pushing on a rope a little bit, and every lead that comes in is like gold, right? And you want to do everything to maximize conversion where it applies. But there's an additive secret that I came up with, okay? And I can say I came up with it. It came out of need. I'm like, okay, the wheels are turning, and I'm knocking down a door, 2, 3, 4, but this is not moving at the pace I want. I know we're going to build momentum. I know our service and our engine is going to pump so much into our Google business reviews and Facebook reviews, and we're going to start seeing lead flow because I know how that whole engine works.
Yeah.
But until then, am I going to sit around and wait for it to tick? I said, no, we got to do something. So I put on my strategic hat. Why do I have to wait for someone to call me? Why can't I go create my own demand? Okay, what does that mean? Well, why don't I start working with people? I have people who have looked up to me all my career in terms of financial management. So I called my brother-in-law. He's younger than me. I helped him start a business. He always listens and he's interested. His neighbor, Elias's nephew in Nigeria. And I started calling people, and I built a whole process for explaining why real estate is a better wealth creator and cash flow producer than even the stock market over a 7+ year period. Okay. You can have dips and valleys, right?
Yep.
And I explained to them the 4 dimensions of value. I explained to them how you need to be diversified. And diversification is not just large cap and small cap and bonds. It's also real estate, a whole other segment outside of the public markets, just like private equity is another segment. So wouldn't you want that kind of diversification? And of course, the real estate market had done well and people are interested. So I built my own sales cycle. Get the contact, educate. After they get educated, guess what? Jeremy, I can tell you this as a fact. 9 out of 10 people, once they get the education, like, how do I start? Okay. And the next step is I built a process. Great. We trained 3 real estate agents and we create a profile of investment and a plan for the next 10 years. Okay, you're going to acquire a property every 6 months. And we turn that over with the profile of the property, the price point, the ROI, which we help with, to the real estate, and they go acquire it. So now I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people buying properties, which we get a referral fee for, and putting them in our property. And there's no competition. I'm creating my own demand community, and guess what? They love it, and they keep buying. One is up to his fifth now. Okay, so we did that, and that added incrementally. So I'm not just waiting for the phone to call. I'm reaching out and educating and creating demand. So that was important in building that. Finally, that 48 unit that we acquired was a relationship with another RPM here in the market. He was stagnant. He wasn't going anywhere. He wanted to do things with his wife, kept in touch, kept educating, inviting him. One day he calls, he says, you know what? I'm thinking of getting out. And of course, we did a deal.
Amazing.
So that's the outline.
So for the writers listening, I cannot stress enough how important that is that Karim said, I got time. What am I going to do? Wait around, wait for the phone to ring? No, I'm a full-time business owner. I'm going to invest and I'm going to go call people, even if it's people I know. And you know, it's cliche, Karim, but I think we have both experienced it. You know, your network is your net worth, right? So much great stuff comes out of our network. You know, it's very much akin to the harder I work, the luckier I get, right? It's like the more people you know, the more opportunities just somehow end up falling out of a back of a truck on your doorstep, you know? And so I love that. I love what you said. And you were just calling people and saying, hey, I know you don't have a door I can manage, but maybe I can sell you a door you can manage. I mean, that's just so obvious, but so few people do that. They say, hey, that's outside of my wheelhouse. So are you okay going a couple minutes over the hour? Because I got a couple more questions. I want to respect your time. Okay. Great. Great. So thank you so much for sharing that. It seems like a lot of elbow grease, rolling up your sleeves and just getting into it. And you know, from our pre-call and watching you and from what you've said on the call, you seem determined not to fail. Like there's definitely a mindset that I'm experiencing from you, which is if I commit to doing something, I'm going to give it my all. Anything you want to expand on that? Any advice you want to give to somebody else? Because I'm just experiencing a whole lot of the winning formula from you, and I want you to put it in your own words. Because like I think that a lot of our readers need to hear it.
Yeah. King Solomon says in Proverbs, whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might. Meaning either all in or get out.
Yes. No 1 foot in, 1 foot out. What is it? To be a little, a big meme is like, don't half-ass anything, whole ass everything. You know, it's like, don't do it if you're not going to do it, you know, go all in. It's worked for me really well.
No, I know. And I know enough from the comments you've made. So there's no plan B. There's
Yeah.
one plan. And the plan is whether we pivot, improve, tweak our product, identify different customers, but we're going to make it. And you know, I have Elias and Dolly with me that are counting on this working because this is it. This is their path to the American financial life and freedom. And so we're going to make it work by God's grace, and we're going to do everything we can. So yes, it's a determination, it is a focus, and it is creativity and strategy. Like you said, if you have time, why do you have to sit around and wait for the phone? You know, I shared this with some RPM franchise, and I said, you know what? It's like my wife likes to fish. It's like going to the pier and lining up with another 50 people. You're all going after the same fish, right? Well, why can't I go get my own pond and farm my own fish? Which is what I did, right? There's no competition. You don't come to my private pond. And so if there is that focus, you will find solutions.
Well done. That's amazing. Making the opportunity rather than looking and waiting for the opportunity is just something I'm watching. I'm hearing from you and I'm seeing you. So let's just zoom back a little bit. You told me on kind of the pre-warm up for the call, you haven't lived in the US your whole life, and that seems to have an impact on you. and you've got strong feelings about that. So walk us through where did you grow up and when did you come to the US and what has that experience been like?
Yeah, so I was born in Cairo, Egypt, the capital of Egypt, um, to Egyptian parents from southern Egypt.
Did you climb
Uh,
the pyramids as like a jungle gym? Is that what you did growing up?
so if you've seen the pyramids, okay, let's show you a picture. One stone on the base of the pyramids, you can have two families stand on that one stone. Okay, just for
I've heard
perspective.
they're just outrageous. Like you can't get
Oh,
your
you look up and it's ridiculous. It's
yeah.
ridiculous. And so I grew up there. Well, I didn't grow up there. I was born there. Year after, I moved to Khartoum, Sudan. Long story. My dad is a serial business entrepreneur from his father, and he was the one kid who got the ball that said, you know, your brother went to medical school. He went to medical. He's engineer. You don't get to do that. You get to do the family business. So get used to it. So anyway, he went to Sudan, and that's where I grew up until I was 17. Um, uh, which is when I came to the US and I went to New Jersey. I went to New Jersey Institute of Technology for my undergrad and did my graduate work at Kessler Institute for Rehab and NJIT's biomedical engineering program. And same thing with my brother. He came, only he went to Georgia Tech and then went to MIT. And and one thing that I have found about this country that I'm very passionate about. First of all, I don't think the US is as successful as it is coincidentally. It is an absolute byproduct of this nation's foundation in the Constitution and the mindset that drove the Constitution, a society that believed in the individual and their freedoms, and a role of government to enable the flourishing of individuals, not to hinder. That sounds maybe basic, but it is not. You travel around Africa, travel around Asia, okay? Even parts of Europe that have gone the wrong direction, in my opinion. And so I've always felt that from the day I landed foot here and afterwards, this nation is designed for people who love freedom. I'm an elder in the church too, and if you ask the 140 to 60 members, half of them immigrants, why did you come to this country? They're going to say one word: freedom. Freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to invent, freedom to create a business, freedom to live, freedom to have a family. These are not given in a lot of parts of the world. As a Christian growing up in a part of the world influenced by Islam, we didn't have those kind of freedoms.
Mhm.
And so, and this is the best place for entrepreneurs. I challenge anybody. Look at the economic model. Look at our financing model, you know, in venture capital and private equity and public debt. Look at our universities. Look at our environment to enable people to pursue their ideas without over regulating them to death. There's no country like this. Okay. And it's in the lifeblood, I think, of the culture that, you know what, the phrase, even though it may be a little unrealistic, I can do anything I want, right? We all have limitations. But within there is no other country that gives me maximum possibilities within my abilities like this nation. And it's been my experience. I didn't, you know, I didn't have a bunch of money when I came to this country. I came to college, and everything has happened since.
Love that story. Came here to college, decided to stay, decided to bring your family over, decided to start a business with them. Now you're perpetuating it. I love that. I think it's amazing. I do think you look left, you look right. It is raining money here in the US. We can make up all the stories about how we have all these challenges, but if you really zoom out, I mean, there is just so much opportunity. What I'm experiencing, we don't have to comment on this, but I heard one of the presidential candidates, Vivek, he had to get his U.S. citizenship, and he said, "Why don't we make every high school student that graduates have to take the same test that any immigrant has to take?" You just spoke so well about our foundation and our roots, about what works for you, and I'm assuming it's because you had to learn to get your citizenship, and so it was just amazing to hear that, and that really brings the truth. How many people that are living in this country don't appreciate the foundation? Would you agree? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's sad. It's sad. If we took if we just a small comment, if we took every high schooler, this is if I could convince the federal government or the state, just offer a summer credit to every parent to ship their high schooler, senior, sophomore, junior, to a third world country or even second world country
Yeah.
for one summer, serve. I assure you, they will walk off that plane when they come back to this country. They're going to get down on their knees. They're going to kiss the ground. And they're going to say, I never knew how blessed I was in the United States.
Yeah, great point. All right, I want to wrap up. This has been amazing, Kareem. I'm so inspired. I'm gonna go start like three businesses after this call. But I want to hear about what's next for you. What's the vision? Like clearly, like that to me, looking backwards is very important because that's where we can talk about, like you said, the distortion between what I thought was going to happen and what actually happened. But you wouldn't have gotten to this place if you didn't have a vision. And so I want to know what your vision is for the next 3 years. Where are you taking the company going forward?
Yeah. So, what I hope to see happen the next 3 years is we go from probably the fastest growing property manager in Charlotte and maybe one of the fastest in the country to a recognized standard that this is the company you go to if you want to build wealth in the real estate market, period. This is the go-to company. They're the experts. And they're trustworthy. Not only do they advise well, but they execute well. And they give us transparency in how we're performing. So I would like to see us in excess of 1,000 properties and being one of the, like I said, the known names and the go-to company for building wealth in real estate.
Amazing. You convinced me. I think at some point, I don't know when it is, I'm going to buy some property with you. I'll have some rentals under RPM Experts Management. Kareem, I really appreciate the time, appreciate the energy, the ideas, the inspiration. Is there any question I didn't ask you or anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
No, you did a great job. I very thoroughly. I mean, you made me think about areas that I didn't think about. Wasn't as hadn't prepared what I want to say, but which is always a sign that you're thorough. The only thing I'd say amongst all the comments is culture is important. Culture is very, very important, and preserving culture. So one of the things when I interview, and I interview every candidate, and I explain to them who we are, explain to them our vision, and I say, if you are uncomfortable with anything I've said, I'll even help you find another job, but this will not be the place for you unless you're all in. I'm not going to apologize for being a Christian-minded organization. I'm not going to change any of our policies, including we have weekly meetings where we open the Bible and we're inspired by it and we pray. That's not changing. We're technology first. If you want to go backwards, that's not going to work. So you're either all into the culture and you're excited, or you don't have to join. Preserving culture in alignment with strategy. I mean, it's all people. You know this. It's people.
Yeah.
And having people that are bought in, single-minded is very powerful.
And when you agree, I mean, I think that, I don't know if just personally, I'll share. I don't know if I'd be comfortable working in a company where we read the Bible every week, and that's perfectly fine.
That's great.
But you, by doing that, you're not only attracting the right team, you're actually attracting clients that then you are best built to serve, right? So by doing that, everyone can be like, oh, what if I don't get the right person? But I'd actually like to take that a step further because I've got some pretty extreme things in my culture as well. I mean, one of our five company values actually has a cuss word in it, and that's because how we feel, right? And it's please excuse me, but it's go fucking bold. Like we want people that are going to be so extreme when they come here, and then that passes on to people, right? So I love what you're saying, and I'm just using this to contrast, right? Like you and I are different leaders, but we're using the same concepts. We're using the same processes, and you're finding people that are your tribe, and then that's bringing in clients that are your tribe. And I'm doing the same thing, right? And clearly we're overlapping with the Venn diagram in a certain way because you've been working with us for a couple of years. So I just wanted to bring up that extreme example because, right, like you probably don't have a lot of clients for very long that you don't want to work with because you know who you are. And I just think not enough of our clients think through what culture does to the clients you bring on. Do you want to expand on that? Because I feel like you're living that to a T.
Yeah, yeah. Two comments. First of all, look at the beauty of this country. I just want you to listen to what you just. We have different personal values, okay, or focus,
Yeah.
and yet we collaborate so well. Rent scale has been very powerful for our company. Okay, why is that? It's the beauty of this country. We can be very unique, and yet we share some common cultural values and morality that binds us, and we can be a blessing to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, you asked about, yeah, so one of the values is I value every team member as much as any customer. The customer is not more important, by the way, for us.
Yes.
We're a family, and we operate that way. So to your point, I don't know if Christian, shared something with you, but we have been gently, politely showing some people the door. So yes, if you're going to treat, and I've had discussions, when it gets to that point, just to set an example to our team, when there's a very, let's say, not so kind owner who's not treating someone well, they get a call from me. And very politely, respectfully, I explain to them that we want the same honor and respect with every single member of our team, even our virtual assistants, that we are affording to you. If that is not something that you feel comfortable with, if you think this is a superior to inferior relationship, this is not the company for you. And I'll even let you out of your agreement early with no penalties. How about that?
That's conviction right there, right? They always say if it's not a value if you're not willing to lose money over it. You know, I don't
That's
know if
right.
you've heard that before, but it's not a value if you're not willing to lose money, lose people over it. It's not really a value. It's just a nice to have.
I love
Well,
the way you said that.
yeah, well, I'm definitely quoting other people much smarter than me, Kareem, but that is something that I've learned from my entrepreneur upbringing. And that's why like what you said. So I just want to say, I love that. I love that we can have that conversation and say, hey, we got different values, but we work together and we're making things better. And I can offer utility where you need it, and you can offer utility where I need it or where my clients need it. Like that is it. I don't need you to agree with me. I don't need you to vote the same way I need to vote. I don't need you to go to the same church I go to. I don't need any of that. I just need to know like we're here on the same mission, you know, and it's a very refreshing conversation, Kareem. And I think that simultaneous conviction and open-mindedness is what has made you so successful with people, with relationships, right? And as leaders, people and vision are the most important thing. And I think a lot of that comes out of the Bible, you know, there's just amazing lessons in there about vision and about, you know, conviction and values. And I'm seeing you do that. So one, I'm so grateful that you shared all these ideas with me today. Two, I'm so grateful that our paths crossed and that we've been able to work together. I've watched what you've done for your team behind the scenes, and it's just amazing. I mean, this is why I wake up every day. So thank you so much, Kareem.
Thank you, Jeremy. You guys are in the full sense of the word, the blessing to us. And we love the people who work at Rent Scale. The caliber is off the charts. And I say that, I don't throw around words. You really are.
I, as you can imagine, as an entrepreneur, that there is no better compliment that I can receive. So thank you very, very much.